Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Nightmare Hour podcast, a podcast where me and my cohort, Eric Havens, who's on the other side of the microphone, we chat about horror films and all things horror, both in the real life and the big screen, and I guess we talk about everything in between. I'm Adam. I'm one of the co-hosts. Hi, Eric. How are you doing?
Hi. I know you misspoke, but you called me your cohort, and that's my new favorite thing.
Well,
can I be your cohort?
You can be my cohort. Here's the thing. I don't know if you do, but it's as much as I love fall with all my heart and my cohort. It's the time when the allergies creep in, and I have to sleep with my windows open, and it gets a little cold. So sometimes you wake up with a little stuffy nose or a little your throat's a little raw from how cold it is. So I have a little bit of that going on today. I feel great. I just have a little sniffles.
I get the puffy eyes. Like I get puffy dry eyes. That's my allergies. It's the worst.
Puffy dry. Yours are dry. You don't get the leaky eye.
They just they soak up everything around them and just turn into death.
I get the leaky eyes. I get the leaky eye in about every day.
Okay, never my eyes. I wish my eyes would leak, boy. But I love a good leaking right now.
Well. As we teased in the last episode, our supersize episode, we're back for all of October. We did it. We did 2 episodes in a row. And you texted me the other day we were going back and forth. What is this month going to look like? What do we want to do? And I think you sent me a message, and we accidentally stumbled into, I think, what the entire month is going to be, which is actually, I think, very exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Each week, we're going to tackle a specific horror trope.
Or genre, that's like basic theme,
sub-genre,
like very common tropey themes of horror. Because there's like the very basic tenets of different kinds of horror movies. So I thought we'd break those up into weeks. And I guess now as good a time as any an announcement, like on October 19th. But what led us to this is we're going to do an episode that's live in partnership with the Emily Taylor Center for Sexuality and Gender Equality, something like that. It's through KU. It's a group I work with. And they do a little feminist fright fest night, and we're going to do a live episode on the final girl and that trope and that idea. So we're talking about that. So join in then. We'll give you all the details. But yeah, we were talking about doing that special live episode in partnership with them. And then we're like, why don't we just talk about the other kind of,
tropes.
Yeah. So this week, I was like,
do I take it over now? Okay.
Yeah, I know it's confusing because I took a drink. You saw me take a drink, but I was leaning you. Sorry.
This week we're going to be talking about, I believe it's specifically cabins in the woods, but we're also going to talk about remote locations, right?
A nice isolate vacation or getaway.
Yeah, remote getaways, remote vacations. It's a trope we've seen in many movies, partially because it's so, when you look at horror, most people think of kind of the schlocky genre, the cheap movies to make a quick buck, and oftentimes, unfortunately, they are cheaper to make. And so when writers come to create an idea, they have to have as few characters as possible with as big a scope as possible. So they try to find an isolated location. And that's where you have things like Evil Dead with the cabin in the woods, or you have the Blair Witch Project or something like that, where they're secluding the limited cast in a location. And typically that means the location is going to be one of the characters.
Right. For as you said, for cost reasons, but also for tension reasons, like stress reasons. Because what's more terrifying than being trapped somewhere?
Nothing. I'll tell you nothing.
Nothing?
Not really. Is there anything that's I don't really have a fear of claustrophobia, but also a fear of being trapped, I think, is on a lot of our scariest lists, right? And whether that means like actually trapped or like emotionally trapped or what have you. I think it's a fascinating.
That's a fair point. I think the only thing that tops it with me is being unconscious, like the things that happen when you don't have any control. Like when you're unconscious, the entire world's your enemy for all you know. Like it's terrifying to me. That's my biggest fear.
Like getting a
like
surgery
sleeping,
or if someone knocks you out.
Surgery or sleeping, and someone like I don't know. Like there's some horror movies out there where like the found footage things where you see people like filming people when they're sleeping, and that sort of thing. And that's just like, no. But yeah, you're right. Like being like trapped somewhere with like when like fight or flight, you don't have the flight option. It's pretty terrifying.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This is, I think, a genre that is very popular. I think the films we talk about are going to be, by and large, ones you've all seen.
Mm-hmm.
So this episode should be a good way for us to get and dive into the trope of isolated locations. And yeah, so and then the rest of the month is going to get a little bit deeper. There's a couple I haven't seen, so I'm going to have to do some homework because you threw one out I don't think I've ever heard of. I didn't know it was an actual movie. For some reason, I thought it was like the actual subgenre. So I'm going to have to check that out and build it. But I think we have this month, we have 4 Mondays this month. We have 5 Fridays. So we'll see how many episodes we get in through this month. But before we dive into this, how is your October going with in terms of watching horror films?
Not as well as good or as well. Anyway, not as positive as I would like. Like I was hoping to follow along with a lot of people who watch it every night, but that just hasn't been feasible because, real life, and then there's children in our house and that sort of thing. But I've done fairly well. What is today? It's the 5th of October, and I think I've seen 3 horror movies. So that's not too bad, right? I'm still like,
pretty good.
It's a pretty good batting average. Like if I was an athlete, like that would be a success.
Yeah, they would hire you again. Is that what you're? Yeah, I think that's what you're saying.
Like I would be on the All-Star team, right?
Yeah,
3 out of 5s.
You're always on my All-Star team, my cohort.
Oh, I will say this, like just like they're not our sponsors, or they probably don't even know it exists. But I will say, streaming service you should really have for this month, if no other time, is Shudder. It is just incredible to go through like old favorites and things you've never heard of, and new movies that they're putting out there. Check it out.
Yeah,
and HBO now has like a Halloween section of their page too. So if you have HBO Max, go check that out. There's some good stuff there.
Yeah, they added quite. Everyone adds a lot. This is, like we said last time, this is our favorite time because whether I think if you're listening to this podcast, you are a tried and true horror fan, and you're looking to get different opinions, different perspectives, or uncover some gems. And this year, specifically since the pandemic started, I've tried to really watch as many new films as I can, and I have watched. I'm approaching 200 movies since April 1st, but I'm really trying to, especially with the horror films, which is very hard for me because you and I have seen a bazillion movies, and it's very difficult to see something new, and especially new that's like surprising and good and catches you off guard. So a lot of these movies are pre-1960 is what I'm catching up on. Like I haven't seen a lot of the vintage horror, and I'm not just talking about the Universal. Of course, I've seen most of the big monster films, but there's things like and then movies that I own that I know I'm gonna love that I just haven't got around to. I just watched for the very first time The Innocents.
Yeah, that's sorry. Like the last time I saw that was when Netflix sent me this, so I could probably stand to revisit that. Did it stand up?
Oh boy, does it stand up. And it's not as scary as something like The Haunting, but it is it's just so gorgeous. Like when you watch this movie, it's just visually it's stunning. And it's
Truman Capote, right?
Yeah, he adapted it from, and it's adaptation of Turn of the Screw, which as I was watching it, I was like, oh, this is interesting because most famously that was adapted into The Others, and we've seen it a handful of times since then and before then. But coming up next week, we have Mike Flanagan's sequel to his House on Haunted Hill.
I'm so excited.
And it's based on that story, The Turn of the Screw.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Because during the Innocents, they talk about it being Bly Manor, and I'm like, oh, that's called. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's loosely going to be based on that. So I don't know if I actually haven't seen anything from that. I just know it's called Haunting on at Bly Manor.
At Bly Manor, yeah.
So I don't know other than that, but and I looked up that, but I haven't seen. It looks like some of the cast is. Do you know if the cast of that is the same characters, or are they doing like?
I'm not. It's different characters. Yeah, it's like the American Horror Story thing, I think, where they get the same cast members to do different roles. I believe. I could be wrong, but that's just the feeling I got.
All right. Well, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, me too. The classic film that I still get embarrassed that I haven't seen that I really need to look out this October is Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
Oh
Like I've
my
never seen
gosh.
that. I've never seen it.
Oh my gosh. Good for you. So I've actually seen that on 16 millimeter.
Oh wow.
And that actually kind of could fall. So that could, we could add that to the, since you haven't seen it, to when we do a family moves into a house,
Okay.
because it's the most different of all the other movies we're going to talk about on that day. But it's definitely a group of a quote unquote family that moves into a new house. And oh boy, you're in for a treat. I can't believe you haven't seen that. I'm excited. I don't know if I have it, but there's a new remaster from Scream Factory. But I did see it on 16 millimeter in Nashville. I don't know, like 10 or 15 years ago. It's
Incredible.
a wild ass movie. I
Yeah,
love it.
I've always felt like it was one of those movies that's just been hard to find through my childhood and stuff. And now I'm guessing it's streaming somewhere, but I just haven't thought to look for it.
We'll see if we can get it for $2. You can buy the download. So I bet that would be the remaster if it's in HD. So, or you can buy the Scream Factory. But today we're going to talk about isolated locations.
Mm-hmm. Like just going somewhere pretty, out of the way, out of your daily routine. Take a little break. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Which one do you want to start with? You made a pretty solid list here.
Let's start with the most let's go with the most relevant one, I think. So I think that's going to be when people think remote stay, I think we'll do the two biggest ones first and we'll go from there. So when we'll do them in order of release, they're very close to one another, actually, even though they feel very different.
Besides, some of them are in the early aughts, I think, but yeah, you got a lot of 80s in there.
Yeah, so we're going to start with 1980s, The Shining.
Ooh. I just want to play the music now.
And that's
boom, 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 boom. Okay.
Yeah.
That's enough. So good. One of my favorites of all time.
Yeah, well, you want to set up the movie real quickly and how it handles the isolated location?
Yeah, I think before we get started, we'll talk about this more. But I was looking at this list you made, and then I did a surprise little pick that I'm going to throw at you and see if you think it fits a little later when I was thinking about this. But I think this trope, besides what we're talking about, like the budgetary reasons and why everyone did this, just getting like a cast of 4 in one location and it's cheap and you can film really quickly. And especially things like not The Shining, because it's definitely not cheap, but the idea's there. But like Evil Dead, stuff like that, like the really cheap, low budget movies, like you could stay, like the whole cast and crew could stay there. You get it done in like a couple weeks, head on out. But the thing I noticed about these movies is I think every single one, like not only is the environment part of the horror, but every single one has the group turning on each other. And I find that interesting. Like, take us out of civilization, take all like human history and conflict away, boil it down to 3 to 4 to 6, 5 people. And when stress and conflict arise, what do? We turn on each other. So I think that's an interesting theme that these all turn on. But yeah, The Shining, based on obviously the Stephen King novel, directed by Kubrick, with a very creepy. Is this the creepiest Jack Nicholson or just the truest Jack Nicholson? Like I feel like that's probably like just what he's like to hang out with. Like, that's probably Jack Nicholson, right?
Yeah, I would say that's who he is. I mean, based on most of his roles, this role in Wolf are what I think hanging out with Jack's like.
Yeah, those two combined. But it's a little bit different than like the fun vacation teens going somewhere trope that we all know in horror. But it is like a destination where they're going to fix themselves. And I think that's the other thing they all have. Like it all starts out noble. Like they all go somewhere for really positive, optimistic, hopeful reasons. Like they're going here to fix something, to recover something, to refuel something. And like, again, I think there's something there with like that human tendency to sabotage that. Like we just fuck it all up. And so I think that's what The Shining is at the base. It's just that familial hope of like trying to keep this unit intact with all like personal demons, like alcoholism, obviously, abuse, yeah, like all the things that arise in this. And like you said, the environment feeds off of it, so the negativity amplifies within this hotel. Do you want like? Do we want to go through the plot of it, or are we just going to talk about the theme of it?
No, I think we just touch on the theme and how it handles it. I think that's the
Yeah.
best way, and because they all do it a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Like I think this one's, from what we have listed, the outlier because it is the most structured. Like he's going for a job. It's not friends going to have fun. It's not this like getaway of like optimism. It's kind of like the last grasp like at any normality for this family. Like this is like marriage therapy, family counseling times like 10. Like let's go somewhere and just see if we like no interruptions. We just have to face each other and our problems and our trauma, and let's see what happens. And axes or what happens.
Well, alcoholism. I mean, there's this movie in particular deals with a lot, and I think all these
I do want to I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No,
like before I forget, like there's that like really bad Twitter take about like Kubrick could never be a great filmmaker because of his misogyny and like his like support of the patriarchy and stuff. And I can see that because he was kind of a dickhead, and I think he had a history of being like a dick, especially to the actresses in his films. So maybe he was like a sexist asshole, but his movies pretty like consistently mock and highlight like the evils of like masculine, like bad masculinity and patriarchy and stuff. Like, because this guy, like Jack Torrance, is everything that's like wrong with masculinity, and he's a victim of it too. He's trying, he's done it, but yeah, like failures and the lack of ability, like hiding in the bottom of a barrel, and the lack of ability to like emotionally deal with anything causes this explosion. So like for anyone to say that Kubrick doesn't deal with the evils of patriarchy and stuff, I think they're just a little off.
Yeah. Well, this one, I think maybe more so. Well, so I think every movie about isolated horror, typically, I'm trying to think if there's any ones we're going to talk about that break this, but oftentimes it's a boilerplate situation where we're watching a slow burn simmer into this just big monstrous last act. And this movie, I think, is one of the best examples. You see the edges fraying. You see the tensions just slowly starting to tick until we get, this masterful, like almost nonstop 30-minute chase sequence to the end of the movie. And I think it works quite well here. I think that this movie feels huge, which is interesting because typically it is used in a lower budget way. But this film, they make the hallways, they make the foyers like feel just enormous.
For sure. We need to do an episode on that sometime. Have you ever watched like the uncanny stuff? He like the like how he made hallways that don't make sense and doors that go nowhere, like the design of the hotel and the sets. Like we need to just talk about that sometime, because
I think
there's people that walk out of hallways that don't exist, and like room 227 is a room that has like an open lobby next to it, so it has like 3 feet of wall. If you look at it, like this shouldn't be a room. Like there's like when they walk into the refrigerated area at the tour at the beginning, they come out of the same door, but the entire kitchen's different. It's nuts. Like the things that he planned to make the hotel feel that pressure, it's crazy.
Do you think we should definitely do an episode maybe this winter about The Shining, maybe the book, the movie, and also Dr. Sleep, as well as just kind of like everything, because this is like such a beloved property. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking always trying to find a new horror film, if you haven't seen Dr. Sleep, just stop listening to this and go watch Doctor. I think it's on HBO Max right now, and
it is, yeah.
The director's cut's in
cut,
there, which is I've seen both. I saw them both in the theaters. I was fortunate enough to do so. The director's cut is the one to watch. They're both great, but the director's cut has so many more moments that just I don't know.
Just
It might be
yeah.
Flanagan's masterpiece.
And like the director's piece, it's not even that much longer. It's just the way it was reorganized, and it's just like so much more powerful. So
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. Like, because they restructured everything. Like, it's not in the same sequence you see in the normal version. It's great.
So yeah, this movie I think does a terrific job. We also, in addition to them just being in a remote location, we have weather playing into it as a major factor. So not only
Well, yeah,
are they separated by mountains, and you know, if you've ever truly, not just driving through like Denver, but if you've ever gone a great distance in Colorado, driving up and down mountains, it takes hours. You know, like what would normally take in a straight line 20 minutes, it takes an hour, especially when you look at 1980 when the roads are at best gravel. And so what this does, I think, terrifically is that they seclude it in this like very nice, cool location, but then they're stuck by winter, and the only way to get out is by these, you know, snowmobiles, or you know, snow, like whatever the construction equipment they get into at the very end of the film is. Like, I guess it's like kind of like a snow pusher, but it is just. Yeah, I think it's terrific, and there's no place to go. And by the time everything inside has built up to the unfortunate levels that they get to, there's nowhere to run, really, no easy way out.
Well, this one's right on the edge of like a haunted house film too, because the energy of that place is like it amplifies, and it's like parallel to what their problems are. So they're saying like nature, the environment, the residents, it's all building on top of them. Like it's like this puzzle of trauma and awfulness. It's
yeah, it's this movie's, again, we don't have to talk too much, but talking about the themes here, I think this is just a great example, that you're right, it is almost a haunted house film, but the level of violence here is totally different, and a movie that I think if anybody else made it wouldn't be the same, surely.
Surely you can't be serious.
Okay, do you want to get into our second title?
I don't know what the next one, and you said chronological. I don't know what the next one was chronologically. It'd have to be Evil Dead, right?
Yes, 1981 is Evil Dead.
Yeah.
I'll set this one up since you set the last one. This one, quite simply, of course, both of these last two are ones that I think every horror fan has seen, but maybe you're not thinking too much into the trope and the theme here. And in this one, you have five friends that are traveling to a remote cabin. I believe, I always think that for some reason it's supposed to be like spring break, but they're all in like fall gear, so we'll call it a fall break. And they unknowingly, of course, find and play a tape that awakens an ancient evil in the woods, and then all hell breaks loose for the entire night. This movie is more a real-time situation, situational horror, and one where once they get into the woods, they are unable to get out by supernatural circumstances. Did I set that up good?
Yeah, you did so good. I'm proud of you.
Man.
Such a great cohort.
Yeah, so this one is like, you know, of course, this is a very low budget film, under $500,000, shot on film in 1981. This movie is just, you know, we don't talk too much about the movie, but the way they trap the characters, and I mean, even in the beginning, like they try to leave, they do, and you know, now we have to think like, why doesn't someone just pick up their cell phone? And here it's, why didn't someone just get in their car? And they get in their car. Ash tries to leave, and you know, the bridge is out.
Yeah, always. That's the environment, after the environment amplifying and like making it worse thing again. I'd say like the word that I'd use for this one more than the other one is just visceral. Like it's very like physical, and it hits that part of you, like this very physical. Yeah, like there's a lot there, and I also think it's really interesting, not to get outside of our lists, but to see how they, like the filmmakers, feel about it, because you watch this and then you watch Evil Dead 2, which is pretty much a remake, but like by the Three Stooges. So
yeah,
like just to see those two compare, like how I mean, this one has some humor in it, but relatively straight, relatively horrific, and compared to like the like really like gonzo physical comedy of the second one. It just makes you wonder which one is how they really wanted to approach it, you know?
Yeah, I think. I mean, yeah, this is, especially when you look at Sam Raimi's the rest of his career. This movie is so graphic and disturbing and not fun. Really, not
No.
fun at all. Like this to me is still this one of the scariest experiences I've had in my life. You know, I saw it very young. I think probably like 10 or 11, maybe even younger than that. And I think at the time I had also seen Evil Dead 2, which is the one I actually think I saw visually.
Yeah.
And then when I had my chance to get to the tape, it was Evil Dead, and I was like just horrified how much scarier it was than like
Yeah.
the images I saw that kind of looked cartoony. But this movie is very, to me, it is still very scary. Like, sure, there is like some things about it that are a little hokey, but you know, by and large, it's works. It's very effective. It's like you said, visceral.
Yeah, like it's got one of those scenes. Like I'm not even sure it's necessary, and it's a little masochistic, maybe an argument if you want to talk about it. But like the scene where the tree like sexually attacks her, like that's one of the most like hard to watch, horrifying scenes still to me to this day. Like, and you talk about the environment attacking and isolating and stuff. That's a perfect example of how harsh this movie is. Like it's dark.
I've never considered this movie. So you've said it twice now as an environmental attack. I want you to sell me on this a little bit more. I do think I fully believe you in this, but I'm so intrigued because I've never considered this movie like environment versus people.
Well, I mean, it is to a point. I mean, it's more the demons versus the people. Don't get me wrong. Like that's the bigger threat. But as you mentioned before, like the river and the bridge getting washed out, the like all those little patented Raimi shots of whatever running through nature, and then the wind and doors flying open, the trees attacking this woman. Like you can't ignore that. Like the forest is not one of the monsters. Like it's part of what's like trapping them and attacking them, right?
Yeah, I think you're correct. I'm on board. I think that's fascinating. And as a sidestep, because they're similar, and I think we should acknowledge it here. The 2013 Evil Dead, the remake. So, you know, that was something that we'd been hearing as horror fans for quite some time, that they were going to do Evil Dead 3 proper, not Ash versus or Army of Darkness, but an actual Evil Dead 3. And of course, over time that became lingering, and then eventually morphed into the remake. And the remake was even, I think, more terrifying as fans, because we're always terrified of like remaking one of these classics. But when you have the original producers involved and they know what they're doing, and then here we have a movie that, for me at least, may be the best of all of the Evil Dead films. And it keeps the idea of isolation, but the purpose here is much more different. It's not just kids going to the woods for a weekend party and getaway. This is going to help their friend get sober and try to break a habit. And that was such a brilliant idea.
Oh yeah. And like the environment is even more of a factor in that one, I think, too, because they have the river taking over the bridge and all the same stuff. Then it rains fucking blood at the end. Like there's a hurricane of blood going on at the end. So there's like even more.
You just spawned a movie. Sci-Fi Channel's calling. They want to make Hurricane of Blood.
I'm sure it's been made.
I just thought that was a terrific way to use the isolated location in a way that we haven't seen before. And it's almost so simple. Like, of course, like how many times have people tried to self-service help, you know, somebody has a drug problem or alcohol problem or anything like that, or an abusive relationship. The amount of times people in the world self-service, it's shocking we haven't seen that more in movies, let alone in horror movies, because it's a brilliant concept. Taking the woods and it works. I mean, it unleashes these monsters in a totally different way. And if you know, of course, we still have the fumbling idiot that reads from just the most terrifying version of the Necronomicon.
It's like, oh, this book's made out of skin and wrapped in barbed wire. Perhaps I should open it and read. one of those moments. But I do like, not to get too much in the remake because we're talking the original here, but like I do like that, like for a large portion of the movie, the drug addict is the only one making like rational, logic-based decisions in this movie. Like everyone else is doing the stupid things, and she's like, "No, everyone, let's go."
Yeah.
I just like that touch. But I do think it, like that drug addict with the original, it is like, it's very, and the trope with all of this is like how the isolation is a search for like a cure or a solution, but it always turns like it becomes the opposite of what they want it to be. It becomes like the villain instead of the solution. So
Yeah, I think it's just it's a movie that, especially as a young filmmaker, I would look at and be like, okay, I could do that, right? That's just something I could do. It's one location in the middle of nowhere, so, and it's an old location, so spilling blood isn't a big deal. Destroying stuff isn't a big deal. It just seemed attainable, and it was, I think, probably one of the first times where I'm like, oh, you could make stuff cheap because you're in the middle of nowhere with one location. There's only 5 people really in this movie, and they get reused as the villains as well. It just, it was. I don't know. It was, of course, it's an influential movie for all of us, I think. But
I got another one to throw in. I'm gonna
yeah,
see if
yeah, this one we had to talk about these first two, but and both of them use their environments quite well. But the cabin does the cabin in the woods trope start with Evil Dead?
I believe so. I believe so.
I mean, there might be something else, you know, secluded. Of
think
course, you
that's
have like Dracula's you know, castle and stuff like that. That's,
well,
you could
there's
argue,
like,
but.
and there's always probably some like really like thing that didn't catch on that
Were
was
you gonna
probably
say
badly
Rinky
made.
Dink?
Yeah, it was. I decided against it. Like some lesser film that didn't really catch on to the zeitgeist, but yeah, like, you got to give this one credit because I do think it was the one that like introduced it into pop culture, like the cabin in the woods.
Okay, you want to drop one on me that I don't know what you're going to tell me, and I'm nervous because
I've got 2 now that I think are going to like that I think might apply. I'll start with the one I had.
Yeah, you go
first.
Ahead. You go. Drop them.
What about this one? It's also the same thing you're talking about, like filmmakers making a movie in one location to be really cheap with a small cast. Same things apply. Same isolation, same trapped, but it's a little different as it's not intended. I'm saying Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, I think that counts as isolated location, right? They get stuck in the farmhouse. You know, it's not. They don't intend
to like go there, but they're all traveling. They're all travelers. Like they're all going somewhere.
Well, could you make an argument for all of the Living Dead series then?
Not for the isolation, yes, but not like the intentional isolation. Because like Dawn of the Dead, it's already gone shit bad. And then
but Day of the Dead, well, I guess they don't travel anywhere, right? They start there. So
well, they go to that little underground thing. They find the people. But yeah, like there's no let's go to this place. And
right.
I guess, but I just think Night of the Living Dead is arguably there because they're all it's all foreign to them, and they're stuck in this ice, and the environment, a la Dead People, are keeping them there. So I thought maybe that one might fit, but that one might belong more in like the zombie trope. I'm not sure, but I think there's elements there.
I think the movie, for it to count as an isolated horror, like we're talking about, they have to start outside the original location, right? Even if it's just like a car at the beginning, like for example,
I think the only one we see in Night of the Living Dead traveling is the brother and sister, and they're just gonna go see like their uncle or their dead cemetery.
But yeah, all the characters start elsewhere and then end up in a trapped location together. And again, boilerplates there. I think all the isolation movies we talk about, you have to have that boilerplate, like slow burn, like they're having some fun. They're not acknowledging what's truly happening, up to a level to where it gets out of hand so much so that like either people die or what have you, right? Because that's the difference between a haunted house, because haunted house is usually that trope. You would have like something happen very early on and the disbelief or trying to help whatever is happening, the ghost or what have you. So I think that for sure counts. Night of the Living Dead 100% counts.
Sweet. Good. I'm glad that I passed. I'm 1 for 1 today.
What's fascinating in that one, though, is that of course, the horror in that movie is outside, externally from the location rather than inside.
Hmm.
Well, but is it
No,
though?
that's like like the conflict is the movie.
Yeah,
Like the horror is each other. Like
the
it's
horror
a
is the
civil right.
location,
Yeah.
really, right?
Yeah. Like there's a civil rights like battle going on there. That's the horror of that movie. Like the have and the have nots. I don't know. All that. Well, I'm glad you are into it. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I think that one's great.
So do we go back to script now?
Well, you had another one for me. I'll let you hit both of them for me.
Okay. This one I think is even more so. But I didn't think of it when we started listening to these movies. I might have even put this one in the slasher. But I'm thinking Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I'm trying to think.
They start off in the van. They're going to go find this remote house of like their dead uncle or something that they inherited. They're on a road trip. They get there. They're isolated. People start disappearing because they're looking for help, right?
Yeah. Do you think? My only thing with that is, I guess like they go to look for. They're not really truly trapped in that location until like very late.
Well, the van's like, why? Oh, they lost the keys or something? I can't quite. It's been a while since I saw that, but they're stuck there. Like they're stuck there after. Or are they just waiting for their friends? Because they're stuck in that house.
Waiting. I think they're just waiting for their friends.
And why are they going next door? They need like gas or something. I should revisit this one.
It's been a minute since.
Yeah,
I watched it a lot, like prior to me being 21.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite horror movies of all time, just because of the things we're saying, like how much symbolism is there and how simple it is, and like being trapped. But I don't remember quite why the first person goes to the house.
Yeah,
bad house.
I think it is for gas. For some reason, I'm trying not to get confused with the remake, which they go because they for gas as well, but they hear a generator running, and that's what brings them up there.
They do hear the generator in the original. No, the original they hear a generator too.
So that's the same thing in both of them. Okay.
I
don't know if that one fully counts for me because it becomes more of a slasher movie. They're like he's chasing people down the woods. Like you're not fully stuck in the house until like really the last. Like,
and there is like an external like physical person villain. It's not like all internal.
Yeah, and it's not. Yeah. I think while it's close, it's not exactly.
Ooh, we might have a little bit of a Adam versus Eric here then, because one of these movies on your list that we were talking about earlier is dangerously close to not fitting by those same criteria. Should I bring it up now?
Yeah, go ahead and bring it up. Fight with me.
We put on here Wrong Turn, and that's basically like Texas Chainsaw in the woods. Like they're on a trip into the woods. Mm-hmm. They find this cabin because they need help. And then you find that like family of inbred.
Do you think okay, but with that one, do you think you might be right. That might be more survival horror.
Yeah.
Which I think maybe is what Texas is as well. So we'll drop that one from the list and I'll bring you another one.
Oh wow. I didn't expect it to go that easy.
No, I think you're correct. I think Wrong Turn, while it's close, it's not exactly what we're
okay. Like I thought I was going to get Texas Chainsaw on this list. That's where it was going to end. But they were like, nope, let's kill them both. They're off. They're out.
Yeah, you're not getting Texas, and we're taking the Wrong Turn off. I think that makes sense though. I think they're survival horror.
Mm-hmm.
Which
I didn't see that. Yeah, and like it's close to like the Deliverance style of horror, like where like people go into the woods and the locals are none too pleased.
Right. Yeah. It's close. It's just not exactly.
Okay. Well, that leaves us one movie on our list. Is it my turn to introduce?
Yeah, because you yelled at
me. So furious.
Yeah.
We're going next with Eli Roth Cabin Fever, which is arguably borrows quite a bit from the Evil Dead, but it is even more nature attacking them literally. So it's a lot of the elements that work with Evil Dead, like the friends going off to vacation in the cabin, with the added element of environmentalism, I guess would be kind of like the message of this movie. Like
I think so, because it's all about, really, it's about clean water.
yeah, yeah, because they get some bad water.
I mean,
I have to say, I'm not really like, I know a lot of people love this movie, but I am not really an Eli Roth fan. Like, I don't think he's made a movie that I've really enjoyed. So
I think his Hostel films are a little more successful to me. But this movie, this is another one that's like, it felt like a win. And I think this came out in 1999 or 2000, maybe 2001, actually. When this came out, I think it felt like a win for horror fans, because it was like a no-name guy, young guy, like coming out of like college and making this movie. So I think we wanted it to be good. I think today there's certainly a lot of problematic dialogue in this, but there's still, like, I think once it gets going, what this movie made me realize is I like movies where friends and family who should be looking out for each other in a time of panic turn on one another and becomes a very like I don't know, like almost all these characters have different sociopathic ways about them, and I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And it does, like, much like The Night of the Living Dead, without a lot of the heft and social commentary, it has a lot of that. The main conflict is what humans do to each other and how they treat each other. I always find that interesting.
Well, yeah, this one's not too crazy because we already did Cap in the Woods, so we don't have to touch too much on this. But I do like how this movie creates so much paranoia, so much panic, and I mean, paranoia is the biggest thing here. It does have the boilerplate in it.
Oh yeah,
they're fully locked in, in a singular location. But what's fascinating is, had they actually just drank beer the whole time, they would have not died. And had they not like taken a shower, like all these things, but they're turning on one another. And of course it goes kind of the evil Night of the Living Dead approach.
And that's what I mean. It's funny to say off the Evil Dead, which is pretty gory in its own right, but I like the style of this and like that weird fetishization of like bloody gore, like what they call it, torture porn back in the 90s, early aughts. Like that's just totally not my, like, I don't like dwelling on someone's shaving their legs and their skin coming off for 2 minutes. It's just not my kind of movie. But you're right. It does ratchet up that same kind of feeling that these other movies were talking to, like the amplification of conflict and the isolation building it all. And especially in this one, like the environment literally attacking them.
Yeah, I think this is, wow, we have two movies about isolation and loosely about environmentalism. That's unexpected, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Which I want to throw another one in now. I'm just jazzing right now.
Three for you.
Well, I just saw the most recent one. It was actually, speaking of Shudder, since I'm still jazzing, by the way. Like, just speaking of Shudder earlier, Anyway, The Beach House. Like, have you seen that yet?
Yeah, I saw it.
That is same thing. Like, they're going to this beach house to rekindle their relationship that's on the rocks. They run into this older couple, and the environment, whatever that is, this like sentient microbiotic thing attacks them. Yeah, creates like these new species within humans and make them all zombie-like, and they end up attacking each other. So it's very much in the same vein.
Well, since you introduced that, I'm going to give you two more that we can talk about, and then I have.
Okay.
And these are like a duh, but you're going to be like, oh, okay. But again, isolated locations, boilerplate. I think both of these are fucking the examples, and that would be 1979's Alien.
Mm-hmm. Does that count though? That's more of a haunted house film. That's like a moving in haunted house, because they it's like a work trip. I don't think that one counts.
Is that because they don't leave the location? They're always in the same location.
And yeah, and it's not like that. They're not going to solve anything. They're just working. It's not like some trip.
What about? Well, this might be the same then. Even though I think it's isolated horror because they can't leave, they're trapped.
Mm-hmm.
And you get the boilerplate situation.
There should be a drinking game for boilerplate. Just drink every time Adam says boilerplate.
It's 1982's The Thing.
That one's hard. That's tough because you're right, and it fits every other like check mark we've talked about, like the environment versus us and us versus each other. I'm gonna give you that one because we don't know like why they're there. They might be trying to like we don't really get much of their backstory. Maybe they are there like trying to escape.
And they
something.
leave and bring the Thing back with them.
The Thing comes. I thought that was with the dog.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. But they go to another place, and it comes with them, and then they self-quarantine, or try to. They try to quarantine.
It's more of a COVID movie, really.
Yeah, but I think it fits this isolated.
I think you're right. I think I'm going to allow that one. Yeah, I agree on that one. That one's great. Did you know there's kids are playing this video game now called Among Us or something like that? Have my kids been playing it? And I'm just like, this is the thing. It's a video game where these people like you play a character. It's like online, and you're trapped in this place, and you have to find out which one of you is the imposter. And I'm like, this is the thing. Like you're just playing the thing right now.
Yeah. Huh.
So
well, yeah, I think that
I'm going to give you that one though, because I think you're right. I think it checks off like so hard, so wholly checks out all our other little tropes that we've introduced here, that we can kind of sidestep that they didn't all come together in some like unified hope to reconcile or like bond.
Yeah. So do you have any other ones you want to talk about, or do you want to just go back to the main trope real quick and kind of start wrapping up why these work, what we love about them? And
yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Because if we start thinking too long, we'll just start naming 1,000 horror movies. And that's the worst podcast.
People are probably like, why not Cabin in the Woods? And why not, this, that, and the
other? Cabin in the Woods, to me, it comments like, this is Cabin in the Woods is basically this podcast. It's not really one of those movies. It's more of a comment on these movies.
Yes, I agree. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is this genre I think is fun for all of us because it's interesting because it shows you what you can do with so very little, like from a cabin to a hotel to I guess a research station in Antarctica. You have to a tent, right? You have all these things you could do where you lock people away or pretty close to locking away in a secluded location, and it's how creative can you get, and it's really like how strong are your characters.
Yeah. Well, and I think like when you make a film like this, what makes it most powerful and what the writing really has to do is you can't rely on the slasher or the ghost or this external horror. Like it's a very internal horror kind of movie. It's got to be the conflict, human conflict. I never realized I talk so much with my hands. I'm just seeing my monitor. I'm just doing things. But I think that's what is really interesting about these movies is that it is like it's a microcosm of society. All these movies are about different tribalism of like society, and how in the best of times they can coexist and the tension stays at a medium and everything mostly functions. But when shit goes sideways, that's another fun cliche saying, then everything just turns so terribly. Like we fall back into our like evolutionary cave people mentalities and just turn against each other, and it's violence and it's awful.
Yeah, but with is there any negatives to an isolated horror film besides that your characters are limited? But I mean, that's not even a negative.
No, I think it's probably easy to make a very bad one because it's cheap. So like if you have it's probably easier to mess up because you can have less successful elements and still make it because it doesn't cost you very much to make it. So maybe there's more bad ones of these than great ones, but when they're on, they're really great.
Yeah, I think this is one of the best genres. It's certainly one of the most inspiring to watch because when it's done well, it's just they just for me at least, they invigorate me in a different way. It's like, wow, you can do so much with so little cast, so little, like.
Oh, The Strangers. Does that one count?
Yeah. Well, let's see. They start they start somewhere else in the beginning.
Uh-huh.
They go to a place that should be fine and safe, right? Which is,
And they have relationship troubles, like they're having a little bit of tension.
So there's internal conflict, and then there's an external force that shows up, and that basically keeps them locked into their play.
Yeah.
That for sure counts. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know, because The Strangers are a little bit like they're sliding a little bit into like the Texas Chainsaw Family kind of external, but they're come to them, and it's in that one location.
Yeah, I think that one for sure counts, and that's a good one, because that's just is that the only one that's just a house that's not a haunted house movie?
Yeah, I think it's
because it's all one night. There's very few like slasher movies, I think, that are, unless you're going to go into like Friday the 13th and things like that. But most of these movies are multi-day, and that one's in a singular night. It's very Night of the Living Dead-esque, actually, the more I think about it.
Yeah, that's very, very, Okay, I'm gonna see what I mean, but like they'll keep popping in our heads. But we gotta close this up.
Yeah, we'll wrap this up. So, isolated horror, one of the best horror. I think we're gonna probably get a million different people emailing us and yelling at the podcast that we can't hear, that are like, "You idiots, you forgot this one." But there may be reasons we forgot that. We didn't forget it, but maybe we consider it something else, because there's. I mean, we talked about a lot of other movies we didn't actually bring up today. But I think this was a great way to kick off our month of horror tropes.
I think so. There's a lot there. Just kind of feel free to email us at whatever our email is, and Facebook us and stuff.
It's a Nightmare Hour Pod, and as we wrap things up, and we get more consistent. Listen, Eric and I, we're all human. We get more excited. We get more. We're always excited to do the podcast, but we certainly it's going to keep us on the rails to see more people listening, talking about it, interacting with us. So if you like what you're hearing, like, share. Send us an email, comment on our social media. Let us know you're listening. Let us know your thoughts. Tell us we're dumb. Tell us we're exactly as smart as you are. And just interact with us, because that just like, it's like spitting fuel on a fire. It just keeps this Nightmare Hour going, and we're gonna keep it going, but it certainly makes the fire bigger inside of us.
Yeah, and that's why we started this. It's because we're all stuck at home. Let's just talk about stuff.
Yeah. Well, so next week, do you know which one we're going to dive into next week? I'll put you in the spot as we pick.
I have to go back through our messages to see what they were.
I think I have all of them here. Let's do a family moves into a house.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, let's do it.
So next week we'll be chatting about, most of these are going to be haunted house films, but not all of them. But it's going to be the trope of when a family or couple, whatever, we use family pretty lightly, somebody moves into a new location. That'll be fun. It'll be an all Amityville episode
again.
Yeah, back at it again. Go back to our roots. And then coming up, we'll see there's a few other options. We have Don't Open the Blank, which is like, something like Hellraiser or a book or where you read something you should, or whatever.
Like Evil Dead could fit into that as well.
For sure. And then we have The Final Girl, which is going to be our live episode later this month. And then we have Evil Kids / what are you going to call it? What do you want to call it?
I just gave you the name of the movie, and you didn't know it was the name of a movie. You said.
Okay, yeah. So it'll be like Evil Kids, and that genre is actually pretty wide-reaching.
Yeah.
So I think we dropped like 4 or 5 different titles here that are vastly different from one another. So I think that's going to be the 4 we talk about over the next couple of weeks. So next week will be A Family Moves into a House. So if there's a movie you want us to check out that may be a deep cut, or that you're like, you better talk about this, reach out to us at nightmarehourpod@gmail.com or via any of our social media. We're pretty easy to find. That's it. That's all we got for this week. Let's get back to our favorite month, our favorite time. You need to catch up. You need to watch like 10 movies in a day.
Okay. Right now.
Yeah.
Can I watch them fast forward? Does that count?
2.5 times speed, baby.
All right.
All right. Well, until next time, the hour may be over, but the clock keeps ticking. This or that was the Nightmare Hour podcast.
Thanks. I'm bad at this. Goodbye.